Hi, I'm Representative Kevin Scully from Ward 6 in Nashua, New Hampshire, and you're watching The People's View. Today I have a very interesting guest, a fellow representative up in Concord who I work with extensively, and I'm very happy to do so. His name is JD Bernardy. JD, welcome. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for having me here. Yes, we do work together on the House Republican Alliance. It's a group of 3 tri-chairs, but it's a whole group of Republican representatives that are interested in ensuring our bills have harmony with 2 principal things: the New Hampshire Constitution, U.S. Constitution, and the Republican platform. And that's very important to when we analyze the bills that are coming before us, to make sure that we are being responsive to our number 1 oath, the Constitution.
Yep.
And secondly, we're out campaigning saying we're standing for these Republican principles, so let's make sure those pieces of legislation line up.
Yes, I'm very proud to be associated with this caucus also. So yeah, we're a group of people within the elected Republican body. And we are, I like to say it, the leadership of the Republicans are focused on getting legislation passed. Our focus is asking the question, should it be passed?
Should it be passed? Exactly.
And so therefore, yeah, we spent some time together trying to go through all of the bills that come through the House of Representatives, and we give people our opinions using those criteria that you had mentioned yourself, which is the U.S. Constitution, New Hampshire Constitution, and our Republican Party platform,
Correct.
Which I know you and I take very seriously.
Yes.
And we use that as the litmus test we hold it up against every piece of legislation to say whether we believe we should pass this or not.
Exactly. And if a bill doesn't touch either of those 2 areas, we make no comment. We just say no recommendation one way or another.
Right. Well, it is kind of interesting, too, because sometimes you run into conflicting platform issues, right? Where a bill, you look at it and go, well, it does satisfy this, but it kind of violates that. And
right.
then in those situations,
Then we say, vote your conscience. Which of those criteria do you think holds broader sway, so that you can make your decision based on that?
So it is interesting. We are getting into this high-tech world, and I think it was kind of driven by COVID. But now we have our meetings on Zoom, right? And we have
Yes.
we set it up. And we have another rep we work with, Caitlin Kutab, who I think is an absolute technical genius, thank goodness.
Yeah, she runs the show on all the electronics, which is great because that's not my forte.
Right. And she's very organized and helps run the meetings as well. And and I think she's a really, really important and valuable member of the tri-chair. I'm sorry she couldn't be here today, but she had some medical issues in the family.
Yeah.
We'll have her on, maybe the 2 of you back another time. We could talk some more
That'd be great. Yeah.
about that. Now, I'd love to know a little bit about you, if you want to share your background, who you are as a person, what you did in life, how you ended up in the, House of Representatives. Yeah.
So I originally come from a couple towns in northwest Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Went to University of Minnesota on a Navy ROTC scholarship. After that, I joined the submarine force as part of my Navy commitment. And that brought me to Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, because the sub I was on went through a refueling overhaul there. I was the reactor controls officer at that point in time, so I took the old reactor out, put the new one in, started her up, and then when we got ready to go to sea, I was communications officer on board. And there we were chasing Ruskies in the North Atlantic. But I really enjoyed New Hampshire when I, was there in that refueling overhaul, so I stayed. I never went back. I went to Franklin Pierce Law Center after getting out of active duty. I did another 21 years reserve, but active duty in Concord, at the law school in Concord. After getting my JD, it was the Law Center is a law science-focused college, a law center, and it's now part of it's now UNH Law. But where do I go with this degree? Do I go into regular law, or do I try to go a different direction? So I really, with my background as a biochemist from the University of Minnesota and a nuclear engineering background and submarine engineering background, it made sense to go into corporate law. So I worked for New England Nuclear Corporation, which was, they made the radiopharmaceuticals for virtually all research done in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Every university using radio tracers, they were a manufacturer of them. And they had a parallel branch of radiopharmaceuticals on the drug side. And after 3 years working with most of the government agencies, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Department of Energy, Department of Transportation, the EPA, and whatnot, I switched over to working with the FDA on the radiopharmaceutical side, and I stayed there ever since. I did essentially 40 years of drug development in 7 different companies,
Wow.
mostly biotechs. You end up, you're working there for 2 to 4 years, and they either sell the product, sell the company, or it doesn't make it, and you have to move on to the next one. But I have a broad experience in pharmaceutical development.
Well, you must have nerves of steel to get into those startups, because nothing is guaranteed, right?
Nothing is guaranteed, and they say on average 1 out of 10 actually makes it. Unfortunately, since I did 7, I didn't get.
I did 3 more, you would have had it.
3
Right?
more, I would have been there, but okay, it didn't work out. But I had a lot of fun. We did a lot of good things. I do have 4 drug approvals, but nothing of any. Well, the most important one was technetium-99M sestamib from the very first company I was working with. It became DuPont Merck.
Oh, wow.
And that's the leading heart drug for doing nuclear stress tests.
Okay.
So that is a multi-million-dollar drug, and that was.
You helped develop something that really helps save lives, right?
Absolutely.
Which is kind of a cool thing to be able to say.
It is.
I was wondering if your time in the submarine service, I assume you developed a thick skin and patience when you're locked in a small space with all those guys that long.
Yeah.
Did that help you open Concord?
Well, yeah, it does. You learn that you have to get along with the team. We work better as a team if you're you want to go strike out on your own, because you're in trouble if you try to do that.
Yeah.
Everything has to work according to procedure, and everything has to work together with coordination. So that's it sets the message all through corporate life, through life generally. No man is an island. You try to do your best, but you do your best through teamwork.
Right. Okay. Now, you obviously, again, had a long and, successful, your career in the pharmaceutical industry. I was wondering what your take was on what Trump is trying to do now here in America. From my standpoint, he's looking at key areas which he thinks are important to our national security. So I would say it would be food, energy, manufacturing, and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
What is your take on it? Is he doing the right thing for America?
I believe he is. I think you struck energy. Getting us back to being a dominant producer is critical. I sit on the Science, Tech, and Energy Committee in the House. One of the number one concerns that we have is making sure that we have safe, reliable, and affordable energy. And we don't have a lot of control of that because we're part of a federal overstructure called ISO New England,
Right.
6 states, and the other 5 states tend to have a different point of view on how to move forward with power production. But in New England, our predominant sources of power are nuclear, natural gas, and hydro. Those are your at least in New Hampshire. That's it. And the renewables, they are making a bite into that, but they're a much smaller component, and they don't have the reliability. If the sun isn't shining, you're not producing. If it's a rainy day like today, I have a solar array in my backyard, and I'm not getting a lot of power out of it today. So we can't rely on that as our predominant power, and so getting the natural gas and oil industry up and going again is important. And I think one of the really important things that Trump did is signal he wanted the Constitution pipeline opened up from the Marcellus Shale in Pennsylvania, which is hundreds of years of natural gas there. To tap into the Tennessee pipeline, which feeds into Massachusetts through New York and then into New Hampshire. And that would give us much more reliable natural gas supply for making electricity. Because in New Hampshire, natural gas, when it's supplied in the wintertime, the first users are the people using it for home heating.
Right.
And the electric utilities are last on the list. So if there's a big demand in the winter to keep your home warm, there's far less gas available to make electricity. And so we need that line opened. And otherwise, we're buying liquefied natural gas because of the Jones Act. We end up having to get it from foreign sources. So
isn't that ironic?
which costs us 3 to 5 times the amount of the cost of if we were using domestic pipeline gas. It's just it's crazy.
It is such a shame because we do have a highly educated workforce here, but our energy costs are so high that it makes it prohibitive for folks to come here and relocate their manufacturing. I think, Timber? I think the gun manufacturer was thinking about putting a plant here.
But went to Tennessee instead.
Because of the energy costs.
Because of energy costs, So, and that's a key driver. So if we can get more natural gas into New Hampshire, that'll help us have stable, reliable electricity available, and that's important.
And I'm hoping again we can really go with some of these newer design nuclear plants.
Exactly.
We have so many blessings and natural resources, but we are an energy poor state. And anything we can do to bring that in so we have self-sufficiency and get the cost down, everybody's going to benefit.
And we've put forward a couple of bills. They're moved from the House. They're into the Senate now that are saying, hey, the door's open in New Hampshire for small-scale nuclear modular reactors, and there's all different varieties out there that are being tested and coming online. I think Wyoming's got one coming online, and there's New Brunswick, Canada. So they're knocking at the door, and we want to say the door is open here.
I was
for that opportunity.
I was proud to vote for that bill too. To say, we're here and we're ready. I'm hoping again they can come up with these small modular designs where they just start knocking them out. And they can.
Well, that's the idea, that they would have something that could be an off-the-shelf production. So once the design is approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, all the safety parameters are all checked out. Okay, now you can take this and plop it into a community, and it's going to be a stable, reliable power source for that whole region.
Right. So I think that, again, is one of the things that the Republican Party is committed to doing. And it's so important to just the quality of everybody's life. Cheap energy is like at the base level bedrock of a good quality of life where everything is less expensive.
It drives and creates the environment for an economy to flourish.
Right.
It's so important, and it was one of the major causes of our inflation when we had the inflation under the Biden administration, overspending and crushing controls on our energy sector. Those are the two things. Well, you lift those unreasonable controls on the energy sector, allow it to flourish. You've decreased that pressure for inflation. So
Right.
that's great.
I think the other thing that Trump's doing that's so important, and it's really not talked about enough, is the fact that he's rolling back all of these oppressive and overbearing and counterproductive regulations
Yes. Yeah.
that have been put on so many sectors of our industries.
Yes, he's asking all his departments to look at their regs, and I think I forget the factor. I think if you want to implement a new reg, you have to pull back 10.
Wow.
I think that's the factor.
Yeah.
But it's asking them to really look at these things,
Yeah.
say, does this currently make sense in this environment? Let's, AI is happening, the economy is changing. Do regulations that we made in the 1940s and 50s, are they still relevant to how we do business today?
Right.
Let's retool those things and make sure that we've got the right direction.
Right. I think I had heard a saying before about the 20/80 rule, which is about like 20% of the regulations, you'll get 80% of the benefit.
Yes.
So really, when you think about it, the Almighty God, the smartest person who ever was and ever will be, just said here's 10.
Here's 10. Here's 10. Yes. And keep these and you'll be good.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep it simple and try to do this. So I'm hoping we can do that because, again, I think that was another part of his revolution in his first term that made America really rebound and so successful.
Yes.
And I think he's on a mission this time. I'm really happy with what he's doing.
He's on a mission to do that, and as you mentioned earlier, also looking in the pharma food arena. And I have, like I said, almost 40 years of life experience in the pharma industry. It really went bad in the COVID era. Mm-hmm. They did not follow. I was ashamed. They did not follow their own rules on how they brought the vaccines, quote unquote, to market.
Right.
They never were approved. They were emergency use authorizations, and the only legitimate way of granting an emergency use authorization is you have to say there is nothing else. And in order to do that, they had to take 2 drugs that previously Fauci and others had written about, saying these were very useful immunologic agents, and say all of a sudden, they're horrible. They're horse paste or something like that.
Let me see if I can guess. It was hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin.
Ivermectin, exactly. And they both have uses. Hydroxychloroquine early on in an infection. Yeah. If you're trying to treat someone late in their course, it's not nearly as effective. But ivermectin was a good therapy all along. And bringing those vaccines into populations that did not need them.
The children?
The children or young adults?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that made no sense. You have to look at, take a look at that course of the disease and who is it affected. Yeah. It was the elderly. And why the elderly? Probably because as you get older, your immunologic function degrades.
Yeah, most of those people had 4 or 5 different comorbidities, and this was perhaps the thing that broke the camel's back.
This is the last thing to knock them over the edge. Earlier than they would had they not had the insult.
Well, I think we also did pass another law, at least in the House. We'll see if it goes through the Senate, basically saying we're not going to recommend any vaccines unless you have pharmacological studies
Yes.
to show they're safe and effective.
They're safe and effective, yes. And so the vaccine rules were ignored for COVID, which is a travesty. But they also passed a law. I think it was back in the Reagan administration because, look, vaccines are less safe than most drugs. There are some people, they're immunologically active agents, so they're going to cause in some people a reaction. And what that reaction is going to be, is it going to be rashes, is it going to be something else? There's going to be a small number who will never be able to take a particular vaccine. Right. And so
well, you'd sure like to know that before you give it to them.
Well, so what happened was the legal community came after the vaccine manufacturers in the United States and sued them essentially out of existence here. And so our vaccines largely are made in Europe and other places. There's a few still made here. But that was the wrong approach. It was better to, I think, advise people, look, you're taking a vaccine and here are the risks, Yes. There is nothing you take. I don't care, even aspirin is not. Has risks. Yes. And ivermectin is more safe by its studies than aspirin.
Right.
But,
isn't that ironic too?
It's totally.
We have Tylenol we're selling over the counter,
yes.
and that kills like 1,000 people a year, and
exactly.
Nobody even thinks about it.
No drug or vaccine is safe. Vaccines tend to be a little less safe than most drugs, and it's just important to advise people of that and then give them when they're needed and not overly prescribe them.
Well, let's see. I'm hoping sanity is going to return and that we're going to get to a better place here soon.
I do too, yeah.
Now, we've got a few minutes left. So we had a little excitement yesterday up in Concord. we voted on the budget, and
yes, we did.
Things started pretty smoothly, but they got kind of rocky there towards the end. It was a very long session day.
Yes.
And we managed to pass, I guess, HB1, which is the budget, right?
The budget,
we said
just the numbers.
That's what we're going to spend.
Each department gets X amount of dollars.
And then the HB2 is where we have all the enabling legislation that's associated with the dollars that we were going to spend.
Right.
And that's where the excitement started.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So
what was your take?
Well, so just so people understand the process a little bit, the budget starts with the governor coming in and saying, here's my budget proposal and the initiatives I want to move forward. And so that becomes HB1 and HB2. Then the House Finance Committee and Ways and Means Committee, they look at the numbers. Ways and Means says how much money is really coming in. House Finance says, all right, given those numbers that have come in, how much of this can we really put in each of those departmental slots?
Right.
And how many of those programs can we actually authorize?
And I guess the trouble is the governor, I love the governor, but her numbers were very, very, how would say it? She overestimated what was coming in.
She overestimated the amount of money that we were going to have next projected 2-year cycle.
Right, so, which was probably, at the time, that was the best guess she could make. The House has longer to look at the numbers, and they can see what's actually happened in the economy.
And the Senate will have longer to look at them, too.
So they'll have even more accurate numbers.
They'll have 2 more months' worth of data, March and April's data, which are really very compelling to totally lock in the numbers.
Right.
So the first bill on each one is the amendment. The amended numbers of the governor's proposal is an amendment by the Finance Committee, right. And so that's we passed that. And on the budgetary side, HB1, not a lot of conflict, but when it comes to HB2, now it's the enabling legislation to address all the various programs. And because we have less money than the rate of inflation that these programs and other departments would have liked, there needs to be cuts.
Right.
Even though the budget and everything associated with it is larger this biennium than last biennium, it's not large enough to accommodate the rate of inflation for everything. So there has to be programmatic cuts. And so there were at least 20 different amendments that were proposed. And of course, the other side has their idea of what they should be, and
one of which was like put everything back.
Put everything back and overspend
and spend
and
money we
way
don't have.
overspend.
Yeah.
And so we have to go through and hear those. But then we had a series of amendments that basically the Republicans were trying to advance and say, okay, if we stick to these, our numbers will come out right. And unfortunately, some of those cuts were not voted for. We got some amendments passed that would have increased the HB2 budget beyond what was appropriate. So, given that, there was a tabling amendment in the middle of this that just caused chaos, which required us to have a recess, have a come to Jesus meeting and get everything back on track and say, all right, who's going to vote for this? Who's not? What can we count on? We need to get a budget that we can pass so we can negotiate with the Senate on what the priorities should be for New Hampshire's people.
We might have to have a whole nother show about that because we're running out of time. But I guess the bottom line, folks, I just want to make sure the folks out there know we actually did pass a budget. That's a little higher than I wanted. Has a couple of things in there I wasn't crazy about. But I think we're going to be able to have a very good, strong negotiating position with the Senate to move forward and do what's right for the people of New Hampshire.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, so listen, I'm going to wrap it up here. Let me just talk to the camera here for one moment, which is I'm Representative Kevin Scully, protecting your liberty and your wallet. This has been The People's View. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.